38 special wad cutters. I did a test on this before where I compared inverted wad cutters to traditional wad cutters. And a traditional wad cutter is typically a 148 grain bullet in a 38 special where it's pushed all the way into the case. Makes a nice clean hole through a target. Also a pretty effective defensive round. And the bottom of these bullets are hollow base, and this is what the bottoms look like. So you have a hollow base bottom. When you invert it, it turns basically into a hollow point bullet. In my past test, I used solid lead bullets, pure lead almost. Got a little bit too much expansion, so the penetration was really quite terrible with the inverted wad cutters. But these are much harder. These are berries plated bullets, and they have a much thicker skirt. So we might see a difference here. And also on my last test, I was requested over and over and over again to test it in the snub nose, not a 4-inch barrel. So here we are. We have the snub nose barrel here. We're going to test it through those. So these actually have different powder charges because I had to load up a whole bunch of them to try to get a really consistent load where we're shooting that bullet at almost the same consistent velocity. It takes a little bit different charge because these are seated out further than these, obviously, and these are hollow base. So it's kind of a weird equation here, but we're going to go through the chronograph and see what kind of velocity averages and accuracy we get at the same time. And then, as always, we're going to go through the Juggernaut box, which contains a 1 3/4 inch pack of bologna to simulate flesh, covered by 4 layers of denim, followed by 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard, simulates kind of ribs or sternum, and into water jugs to catch that projectile. How this compares to Ballistic's gel: typically the back of the second jug is about 12 inches, back of the third 15, back of the fourth about 18 inches. Typically what we do see is about 15 inches right out the back of the third jug as being a good performing round. And we may also launch some of these at 25 yards just to see what kind of accuracy we get, because there's oftentimes talk about, well, they're not going to be very accurate. So at 25 yards, launch some off there as well. So let's get started with the test. All right, I'm about 4 yards from the chronograph, about 5 yards from the target. We'll see how these traditionally seated 148 grain wad cutters do for velocity and accuracy. 795. 793, 800, 796, 790. So pretty consistent velocity there. That's one thing good about a wad cutter. You know, a 38 special is kind of an old style case that was designed on black powder. So a lot of the inconsistencies with velocity is that large case capacity with such a low powder charge. But when you push that bullet in deeper, it becomes a little more consistent. Now let's try the inverted wad cutter and see how that compares. All right, inverted wad cutter. We'll see if this compares for velocity to the traditionally seated. See what kind of accuracy we get to. 786, 806, 785, 764, 787. So pretty similar overall velocity, accuracy, and all of that. Let's hit the Ballistic box and see how they compare to each other. All right, here's the traditionally seated wad cutter. We'll see what we get in the Ballistic box. That hit pretty hard, and damage is actually quite good. It took a chunk of that meat out the way a wad cutter should. All right, here's our fiberboard. Went right through it, just like anything else would. Now let's see what we got in water jugs. All right, the first jug has a lot of denim, a lot of fiberboard debris in it, and the impact hole is perfectly centered, and it's perfectly centered out the back side. Sometimes we see deviation with hollow points, but that's going straight impact on 2. Again, we're punching right through in the same trajectory. Impact on 3. It's deviating a little bit to the right. Impact on 4. The hole actually looks oblong on 4. And it looks like the bullet is in 4. So we hit a little bit oblong. That's a good thing because it slowed it down a little bit. So the bullet doesn't have really any deformation, but it did tumble a little bit. We can tell that by the way it impacted this jug here. It's an oblong slice. And we put a mark out the back, so that's going to indicate 18 inches of penetration. So that's right in that perfect range. Really good penetration for what it was. Now let's see how the inverted wad cutter compares. This is a pretty hard bullet, so I'm not sure we're going to see anything different than this. All right, here we are with the inverted wad cutter. I don't know what to expect with this, but we'll see what it does. All right, I felt a little bit more splash on that for some reason. So what I'm seeing with the baloney pack and the fiberboard is it does look like it chunked a little bit more of that material out, both on the baloney pack and the fiberboard, just a little bit more. And I got a little bit more water splashback too. So jug one is interesting because the hole is much larger where it impacted. Also, there's a slit out the bottom, but our exit hole looks like it's moving pretty straight. Interesting thing on it too, it's chunking more of that plastic away, kind of like a paper punch. Interesting how it's doing that right through both sides. Jug 3, it's continuing that kind of a punching pattern, a little bit more tearing, but pretty significant size holes. I see an impact on 5, a pretty significant impact on 5. So we have that exact 18 inches of penetration comparison to the forward facing. So let's see what this bullet looks like. And what I expected kind of happened here, but there is a little bit more deformation than forward facing. It looks like it expanded probably out to 40 caliber or so, as where the forward facing didn't expand really much at all. So we didn't get a huge amount of expansion, but we got a little bit, which is kind of interesting here. If we pushed it a lot faster, maybe 357 Magnum velocities, we probably would get a really well expanding bullet here. Now let's shoot at 25 yards and let's just see, are these going to be inaccurate or are they going to be accurate? So let's see how they do. All right, traditional wad cutters, 25 yards, we'll see what we get. I'll go take a look. So it does look like I missed one off the paper. Not extraordinarily accurate, but not too bad. A little bit high point of impact because I was aiming right about here. So we'll try the inverted and see how those do. Now here's the inverted wad cutters. I've been told by a lot of people that people have told them that the inverted wad cutters are terrible accuracy. So we should see oblong holes if these experts are right. And if they're wrong, we're going to see perfect punch holes. So let's see what we get. All right, I'm going to go take a look. So here we are. I dropped one. We have 4 headshots out of 5 at 25 yards. So you be the judge whether that's inaccurate or not. So inverted wad cutters versus traditionally seated wad cutters. What's the major difference here? And what I'm seeing is there's not a huge difference either way. Now, the traditionally seated wad cutters are more efficient rounds. They're seated all the way in the case, and with less gunpowder, they are achieving the same velocity as those inverted ones. I think I had about 3/10 of a grain of powder more for the inverted. So the traditionally seated ones are a little bit more economical. And what we're seeing here, same penetration in water jugs, roughly the same amount of damage on the baloney. Accuracy might even be a little bit better with the inverted. So kind of not really sure where to go with this. I think to get that inverted wad cutter to really expand, it's going to need to go a lot faster. So in 38 special and a snub nose, is there a big difference? No, not really. I think overall the inverted probably performed just a hair better on the ballistic target, but really not enough to really make a difference. So inverted versus forward facing wad cutters in the snub nose, that's what you get. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.